So many
Welcome
people.
to Shop Talk Live, broadcast live from Fine Woodworking Live on Facebook Live. Thank you, Ben. I'm your host and Fine Woodworking editor, Tom McKenna. With me this episode is Executive Art Director Mike Pekovich.
Hey, guys.
Special Projects Editor Matt Kenny.
Hello, everyone.
And web producer Ben Strano. As always, Jeff Rose is manning the camera, and we're here with like 250 of our woodworking friends. Today we'll be having some very special guests joining us. Vic Tesolin, Peter Follansbee, Joshua Klein, and with us now is Joe Taylor, who is the Director of Sales of Rikon Tools.
Hi,
Joe,
everybody.
welcome.
Hey, Joe.
Thanks
for having me.
Thank you for coming. Rikon is one of our big sponsors, and they've brought a bunch of cool new tools to the show. You want to talk about them, Joe?
Yeah, we're really excited to be a part of Fine Woodworking Live for 2017. Proud to be a sponsor. And we brought a full assortment of products in all the different ranges, from bandsaws to sanders to lathes, which some of those tools we'll be demonstrating tomorrow in the demo room. So please stop by, check it out. We'll have some good things going on. One of the other things that we brought along with us, too, is, Rikon's been known for their bandsaws ever since our inception. And, over the years, we probably sold about, 10 to 15,000 bandsaws. And what we've done this past year was we introduced a new toolless guide system that's on our updated models of the 10326, 10342, and etc. So we have a retrofit kit available, which allows the user to not use tools anymore, so they could actually just release two knobs that are on the spring-loaded guide adjustments, and they have two adjustment pins to adjust your bearings to the blade, which is really cool, and that's both on the top and bottom. And for those who have the older model 10325, the retrofit kit's available. So we have some of those here.
Awesome.
Check out our website for additional information, or stop by the booth and check them out.
Yeah. These are.
Go ahead.
Can I talk?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
I always do, right?
Yeah.
These are some of the coolest, actually, guides I think I've seen, because I do like that the spring-loaded action on the bearings. You just pinch them with one hand, and then you tighten the knob with the other, and because that's one of the more frustrating parts of changing your bandsaw blade, right? Is adjusting the guides afterwards, and anything to make that quicker and easier is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. We're really excited about it. Some of the other features on the bandsaws that we improved on is our fence. We have a quick adjust fence system. Bandsaws have the tendency to drift a little bit when they're cutting, so now, from the top of the fence, there's a handle with a cam where you could actually adjust and pivot the fence to the left or to the right to compensate for that drift, which has been, it's a great help for the end user, and it's been great for us. And we'll have retrofit kits available for that as well in the next, few months.
Okay, and these fit only the Rikon.
Only the Rikon bandsaws right now. Yeah.
Right now, see, that's the next question. When are you start making these guides
when
for
is the
other
next
brands?
generation?
Yeah.
That's something that we talked about as a group, and because there's so many different bandsaws on the market, and how the guideposts are assembled. Right. So we're trying to come out with a way where we could have a kit available. I wouldn't expect anything for. I'd hate to put a timestamp on it, because then everybody will be calling me.
We're recording.
Right. So. Yeah, and then we're recording. So, but we are looking into it, and
down the
hopefully
road.
we'll have
So
something.
I think what I hear you really saying is that we should all go out and get a new bandsaw.
Yeah, so you want to buy the Rikon bandsaw, basically.
Right.
Well, we are giving one away, thankfully.
Yeah, we're excited about
thanks
that.
to Rikon for offering up that 14-inch saw for a lucky winner, and hopefully they brought their pickup.
Yes.
But actually, no, we'll pick up we decided we'll pick up the shipping on it if needed. So, hey, one of the things that's interesting about Rikon, and we saw it last year in IWF, was I don't know if it's the right word is partnership, but was it Nova?
No.
No, it wasn't
It'd be
Nova.
Record Power.
Record Power.
Yeah. Oh, Tom.
Oops, sorry. Ben,
Hey, yeah, just cut that part
gotta zip
out.
that out. So it's Record Power.
Yeah, so we've developed a partnership with Record Power to distribute all their lathe chucks and jaws and their carving sets here in the U.S. And it's been a great partnership for us. We do some work together on the side, in Europe as well. So, having that partnership with them provided us the opportunity to offer a great product line to the U.S. customers.
Yeah. And you guys are known for, I mean, you guys were one of the first companies to really perfect that MIDI lathe, that benchtop lathe, and really hyped it up. And so it seems like a perfect
so
pair.
it's a perfect match for that. Because one of the things, being in the stationary tool business is you don't have a lot of accessories. But now that we have that partnership with Record, we're able to offer the end user a full selection of not only the lathe but the chucks, and soon to come we'll have some turning tools available.
Cool.
From Rikon.
I thought I saw a Rikon fella walking around with a turning tool.
Yeah, we're really excited about that.
I wasn't sure whether we could talk about that today.
Well, I'm probably not supposed to, so my boss will probably kill me, but this is actually the first event that we're showing it. We just got them in last week after some, development and testing, and we brought the first samples here to try out. So
awesome.
Hopefully we'll get some opinions, we'll get some end users to try them out on the lathe to see what kind of feedback we can get, which is always great, before we go into mass production. So we're excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that'll be in the tool demo room, right?
That'll be in the tool demo room, yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you, guys.
We'll see you later on at the show and during the banquet and such.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and thank you, and, looking forward to next year's event.
Hopefully we'll be here.
All right, great.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Joe. All right. Well, we're still live.
Yeah, and we're going to have more guests, aren't we?
And we're going to have more guests.
It's like Halloween.
Yeah. It's like, see you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
We have all these guests, and I'm not going to say anything funny
You can say whatever you
or
want.
mean, or I'm going to be a polite young gentleman. Well, at least a gentleman, a polite one.
Just keep rambling.
I'm not young. Oh,
We
hey,
finally have
Peter
our guest.
Follansbee here. All right, this is guest.
All right. Well, we have another special guest today. Eminent 17th century furniture maker Peter Follansbee, who's giving a class here at Fine Woodworking Live. And welcome. Thank you, Peter, for coming in.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're looking very good for someone who was a furniture maker in the 17th century.
Yeah, I got a lot of years on me.
An eminent 17th century furniture maker.
Yeah.
So before, Ben was very kind to grab some questions to try to stump our guest with. But before we hit you with one, just curious about how you developed an interest in 17th century furniture. It's sort of a slice of a different view. I don't know how to describe it.
I just couldn't hack the 18th century. There's too many people who were good at that, and nobody was looking at oak furniture. So I just accidentally sort of stumbled into it with a fellow that I collaborated with, now John Alexander then.
Yep.
And I had been a chair-making student of Alexander's, and together we started to study that work in museums, in Winterthur Museum and the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. And I grew up in south of Boston, in a town that was established in 1635. So I knew all the areas where all that furniture came from. So it really resonated with me in a lot of ways.
Neat. And you still demonstrate or teach at Plymouth? Right?
No, I worked for 20 years at Plymouth Plantation, and about 2 years ago I struck out on my own.
Awesome.
So I teach around the country and write in the middle of my second book. And,
awesome.
Do we have time for me to ask a question, or do we have to jump?
Yeah. Come on.
So
man.
I was curious because so we co-sponsor the Working Wood in the 18th Century thing down at Williamsburg every year, and so I've been to that several times, and I always find it really interesting to hear Mac or Corey talk about how they look at a piece of furniture and decipher how they think it was made. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious as to when you're building furniture. How did you figure it out? So why is it 17th century? Are you using? What are you doing? Are you doing like genuine?
What is that all about?
What are you doing? Are you going and looking at old furniture and trying to decipher how it was made?
Absolutely, yeah. That's the key. In fact, I was just talking to Al Breed moments ago, and he used to work at the Museum of Fine Arts. I never was employed there, but was very fortunate to meet the curators there and had access to that collection, to study the collection, to discern how are these objects made. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of reverse engineering of oak furniture.
And is that, what's the appeal of that style of making furniture as opposed to saying what was done by Sam Malouf or Krinoff?
Well, when I looked at that oak furniture, the first thing that struck me was, oh, I could do that. It's a very direct craft, and it starts with green wood. So I'm starting with a log. I'm not buying boards that are seasoned and so forth. So I'm starting with a log and working with wedges and mauls and hatchets. And
it's man's work.
Well, it's just my work. It's something that really just clicked with me. You know how a lot of us, we find, what it is that connects to us.
Yeah.
And that furniture really hit me the right way.
Yeah. I didn't mean that I just meant that was that's tough work.
Peter,
come the letters.
I follow you on Instagram, and I saw that you built a new shop.
Yes.
Looks pretty cool. Do you want to talk about that? The process behind it?
Yeah. How much time you got?
About 30 seconds.
It's a lifelong dream to build a building, and I had never really done it. I had worked on timber framing projects before as a student in classes and things, and just didn't envision that I would have an opportunity to build one of my own. And as I said, for 20 years I was working in the museum, so my shop was there. And then when I left there, I needed a place. So I found out my town, I could put up a shed without a permit as long as it was under 200 square feet. So my shop is 12 by 16, which fits 2 workbenches and a lathe and my tools, and that's all I need. My wood is outside. And so there's no electricity to the shop. It's all daylight. Cool. And it overlooks a tidal river, so it's where I want to be.
That's pretty peaceful. Well, let me get to you. Let me get to our reader question. And this one is from Mike, and he says, I have a Vaughan broad hatchet that I want to sharpen. The problem is that there is a back bevel, which seems unusual for a broad hatchet. Should I grind away the back bevel and sharpen it like a traditional blade, or is there an advantage to the back bevel?
It depends on what you're going to do with it. A broad hatchet, another term for it is a hewing hatchet, and we think of them as having a flat back and a single bevel. Technically, that back is not flat. It's slightly cupped. I think of it as an extremely shallow in-canal gouge that's 6 inches wide. So you're getting a bit of a scooping action there. And so if somebody has beveled that back of it, you might be cutting away a lot of metal to reestablish its original shape. And the worst thing you can do is make it dead flat, because then it tends to dig in. You can hew flat stuff with a double bevel hatchet. So it might be the thing to do with a hatchet like that. Without seeing it, it's hard to say, but it might be gradually removing that back bevel might be the way to go, rather than grinding it all away in one go.
Okay,
depends on how much steel is in the hatchet.
Well, thanks. I know. Thanks for your short time. We're kind of cranking through our presenters,
pleasure.
But I appreciate you coming on. And I appreciate you
We're speed
being
dating.
here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
We're
Thanks.
speed dating.
Speed dating at Fine Woodworking Live.
See you later.
Find the woodworker of your dreams. Who's next?
There's a bevy.
Is it Joshua Klein?
Where's
I'm
Joshua?
not supposed to give away the
Joshua?
surprise, am I? Oh, you're putting a picture of him up right now, Ben says. So, well, no one's saying anything, so I'm going to say
keep
something.
on talking,
I'm going
Matt.
to keep talking. Our
You all
next
set?
guest.
Josh, my next guest, or our next guest, I should say, is Joshua Klein, the editor of Mortison Tenon magazine, which is a really cool once-a-year publication that he started, I guess, last year, and we just got the second issue. Welcome, and thanks for coming to Fine Woodworking Live. He put up a great display here. It's really kind of putting our booth to shame.
Well, thank you.
So how did you go from woodworking to part publisher?
Well, it started for me. I was actually trained in conservation work, so I was working on antique pieces, and I saw over and over in my studio 18th and 19th century pieces. Got to take them apart and see the joinery, and I thought, whoa, this is nothing like I was trained or saw before, and I was excited about that. At the same time, I was also seeing all the tool marks from the stuff that was built without any machines, and I got excited about that process and understanding it. And I heard hand tools maybe were slower than machines, and I looked at it, I thought, no way, this is fast work. So that was kind of the birth of Mortise and Tenon, wanting a publication that was kind of excited about that, focused on that kind of woodworking.
Yeah, and so you're strictly a hand tool guy, and you've got your own. You actually have your own furniture making company, and
so now I was doing conservation work pretty much exclusively, and then I launched this publication, and it has completely eclipsed everything else I was doing. So
sounds familiar.
Yeah. So I'm spending all my time on Mortise and Tenon.
Great. Well, we appreciate you coming in. We have a question for you. It's a finishing question, and it is from a reader named John, and he says, "I've been using denatured alcohol as a solvent for mixing shellac, but I'm curious if I need to be looking into finding a source for Everclear or another solvent. Does it really make a difference in the finished product?"
I guess what I would say is you can use Everclear, but the problem with it is just that you're gonna have to pay the alcohol tax on it. The reason that denatured alcohol is denatured is they add a pollutant, a poison, so that you can't drink it. That's all it is. So the only thing I would say about that is what you want to be careful of is a lot of the denatured alcohols on the shelf in the hardware store are about 50% of the poison. So the methanol is a lot of times the poison that's used. Methanol will cause...
That explains all the days I miss after I do shellac.
Yeah. So if you have if you have a 50% methanol mix, what that can do primarily, it's your eyesight that it's going to damage. So what I'm looking for is as little poison in there as possible, as little methanol. And if you look on the back of the can, it should say 95% ethanol, 5% methanol, etc. Unfortunately, there aren't that many brands that are available that way. But what I did find is the one brand that's consistent across the board, you can find everywhere, is Clean Strips Green.
The green label, right?
The green label, the environmentally friendly denatured alcohol, because it's just almost all ethanol.
Cool.
Well, what about water in denatured alcohol? Because I see a lot of companies, or some companies selling anhydrous denatured alcohol.
Yeah.
And the idea, I guess, is if there's water in the denatured alcohol, it's problematic for the shellac. So they try to either eliminate it completely, or there's just a tiny percentage of water.
Yep.
Is there any water to that story?
I have never had an issue.
Yeah,
I have never had an issue with it.
Yeah.
And also, alcohol is drawing moisture into it.
Sure.
So if you leave it open, that's going to be a problem.
Right.
So for me, I think that's more theoretical. I've never had any issues with it.
Yeah.
So Joshua, I'm a little disappointed you haven't distilled your own alcohol yet.
That we know.
I just haven't talked about it.
Where's the Whiskey Barrel Project?
Yes.
I've heard something about roasting coffee beans in a popcorn
Oh
popper.
my God! Who told you that? Was that Freddie Roman?
Freddie Roman is
Oh
up
my
at Phil's.
goodness.
Yeah.
Maybe I might have done that.
Well, thanks, Josh.
I want to extend an invitation to Josh to come down to Fine Woodworking and use our 16-inch Italian joiner. Because once you do that, I promise you will never join by hand.
I already
again.
have a joiner, but it's
Yeah.
wooden.
It's
Right.
wooden.
Yeah.
It works differently.
Yes, it's a little different. You come use that Italian joiner.
Sounds
Hey,
good.
Josh, thanks for 5 minutes with us on our speed dating episode.
Yeah.
And thanks again for
Thanks,
coming
Josh.
down.
Thanks
It's
for
great,
having us.
Great
We
having you
appreciate
here.
All right, Josh. Take care. Who do we have next, gentlemen? Oh, this is the man for me. It's Vic
Come on.
Tesolin. This is our friend from
You can tell
Canada.
we got a Canadian in the house, eh?
Yes. Now, do we have a translator? Yeah? Someone who can speak
Yeah,
Canadian?
there's a photo op.
Hey, Vic.
How you doing, buddy?
You always disturb me.
Right now,
Are these for me?
joining
Yeah.
us.
Are these my crackers?
You
Matt
eat those in lieu of pay.
We have Vic Tesolin, who is product manager at
No, I'm
not
the
product manager. That's
technical
Wally.
advisor.
You're a technical advisor at Lee Valley Veritas, and he's also giving a presentation on his minimalist approach to woodworking. And we're
am.
happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's good to get some humor again on the podcast.
All he does is cut the board.
That's it.
That's it.
Cut the what?
He just cuts the board. It's a minimalist approach.
Yeah, I don't make anything with it. I just cut the board.
You never should have had Vic and I on at the same time.
Not sitting next to each other either.
No.
Well, we're just happy that you were able to get across the border.
Yeah, well, it took some digging, but we did it.
Well, let me
You try to catapult first.
Yeah, there was a wind velocity problem.
So let me hit you with a question before we get to anything else, because Ben is telling me to
Hurry.
no. He's now he wants me to go
Go
long.
long. Go
Can
long.
you make your mind
this, Ben.
up?
Go long, okay.
this.
Well,
Yes.
Yeah,
so
stretch
let's
it
talk.
out.
Let's talk about minimalist woodworking. You wrote a book about it. What's kind of a 30-second summary?
Well, you know,
Well, it better be
minimalist
short because
suburb.
it's
yeah, no, the thing I got tired of hearing from people was that, you know, if I couldn't have a table saw or if I couldn't have run a router in my apartment, that I couldn't
Right.
woodwork.
Yep.
Right.
You know, and I love woodworking so much that I can't imagine somebody having to deal with that. You know what I mean? For me, it's as much therapy as anything else, as making nice stuff. And so I know, and we know, that if you have a small space, a bench, maybe some hand tools, you can do a lot of cool stuff with that. So I wrote that book basically because I didn't want people to give excuses for not woodworking. I mean, there's no excuse.
Yeah.
You know,
There's no
carve a
excuse.
spoon for criminy's sake. You know, do something.
criminy.
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 Yeah, that's the.
You had a small
Nice
shop.
version.
When I came up to do the photos for your article, that shop, I had to stand in your neighbor's house to take the photos. It was small.
That's right.
was
And then they
small.
served us supper, which was nice.
Yeah, it was very nice.
Yeah, no, that
I
was
mean, it
very
was
cool.
poutine, which is disgusting, but
It was, yeah. But no, it's true. When you were up there, you you were standing like looming right over me and trying to take shots and stuff. The
Yeah.
new shop's nice though, but
Yeah.
like I mean, that was a one-car garage,
Right.
And the smallest I've ever been in was 40 square feet. So imagine me in 40 square feet, like it's But basically, I called it the Harry Potter shop because it was under a set of stairs in the basement, and I had enough room for a bench and some tools on the wall, and I could stand up straight for about 2 feet of it, and then
Yeah.
otherwise I had to be hunched under the stairs. So
I'm gonna start calling you the boy who lived.
yeah, and thrived.
Yes.
Gobby. Well, let's get to. It's a long question. I apologize, Vic.
Okay. Is it a multi-parter?
This one is from Ben. I have a
But
feeling
we'll
it's from that
break
guy
it down
over
into
there.
simple words.
Yeah,
Don't
he's
worry.
denying
Yeah.
it, but
Can you
let's
put it
see.
into Canadian for me?
Yeah.
I'll do it backwards then.
Okay.
I've been trying to set up my extremely small basement shop to work on projects that require only hand tools. This is necessary due to our small house with very little soundproofing. Lately, I've been making picture frames in small boxes, but I haven't found a good solution for cutting rabbets with my current tool set: a block plane, smoothing plane, jack, and router planes, and some Japanese saws. What is the most efficient / cost-effective method for cutting rabbets and grooves by hand? Do I need to invest in a skew rabbet plane? I haven't had good results cutting with a saw and a straight edge, then cleaning out with a chisel.
Right. Okay. Does he have a router?
Does he have a table saw nano set?
He has a table.
I mean, an old school router, not a.
Yeah, he said. Didn't he say he had a router?
He says
Yeah,
he has
he has a router.
Yeah.
Okay, so the
Yeah,
router,
router planes.
The router plane can do your grooves easy, right? Even if you don't have the normal fence that would come on an old vintage one, you can easily hot glue a fence to it and cut a groove that way. It's not the most efficient way, but you can totally do it. One tool that's kind of missing from the basic toolkit that I see is a shoulder plane. And so I always teach a technique when I'm teaching rabbits where you can strike a line with a marking gauge and then come along that marked line with a chisel and just cut out like a V-shaped piece out. And then you can lay, because if you look at old like vintage rabbit planes, they looked basically like a shoulder plane. There was no fences, there was no depth stops, there was none of that stuff. And so if you take your regular shoulder plane and just lay it in at an angle and start making the cut following that groove, then you slowly tip the plane up to vertical. Now, this still takes a little bit of doing, and you're not able to rely on a fence or a depth stop, but with a square, as you get close, you check with the square, and then you start to make any corrections or any biases that you have to fix, and before you know it, you have a rabbit. So for me, the shoulder plane is a great tool for that because, I think everybody should have a shoulder plane. Even machine jockeys should have a shoulder plane because you always have to do a little bit of tweaking to a joint. So for me, I think that's the missing part. Now, of course, there's rabbit planes galore, right? I mean, you can get skew block rabbits, you can get regular rabbit planes, you can get all kinds. But I think if you include the shoulder plane in your basic kit, I think that can do a lot for you. Yeah, so that's how I would do it.
Awesome.
Do we have time for Vic to tell a story? We do. So,
Yeah.
Oh dear,
Get the sensor ready.
this is unscripted.
This is a great story because we have good jobs working at Fine Woodworking Magazine, right? I mean, we love our jobs. It's the greatest job in the world. Vic has a great job working at Veritas.
Yeah.
Can you tell a story about how you got that job? This is the most absurd thing I have ever heard. Just tell the story about sort of how you got the job and how you ended up having the job you have, because it's crazy.
Yeah, it's
It's ridiculous that this worked.
Well, I didn't really.
Now he has to tell it.
I did. Yeah, so I guess I'm stuck telling the
You
story.
got to tell the story.
So I was working at Canadian Woodworking Magazine at the time, and I was looking for a little bit of a change, a pace, and so I actually contacted Wally, who's here with us, because he was my contact with the magazine. He would get me press releases and all that kind of stuff, and so I just put the feelers out saying, hey, listen, is it possible that, there might be some work at Lee Valley that, and to be honest, what I was thinking was the store. Right? Like I could have, that would have been awesome, right? Go work at the store, surrounded by tools, talking with woodworkers, helping them pick what they needed. I thought, oh, this is great.
Pretty good.
And so I mentioned it to Wally, and Wally said, okay, well, that's cool. Let me look around a little bit. And so I think it was like that afternoon, I get an email from the president, Robin Lee, who I knew prior to that because he said, he let me go through the collection as when I was with the magazine and stuff like that.
They're your private collection.
Yeah, the research and development collection. Yeah. So the cool thing was Robin sends me this email and he says, he said, listen, are you able to come and meet me tomorrow at such and such time? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And he says, okay, great. And in the email he sends, don't wear a suit. So I thought, okay, well, that kind of sounds like an invitation to an interview, maybe.
Or
don't
a
wear a suit
party.
or I was pretty certain it wasn't a hot tub party. Why did I have to sit beside him?
Is dying right
I
now.
know. Anyway, so
We're done.
So I show up and I start talking with Robin, and I'm treating it like I'm in an interview, and so I'm saying this is what I think I could bring to the company, and this is I'm selling myself, and Robin kind of starts smiling and sort of chuckles a little bit, and I asked, I said, what are you laughing at? And he says, well, you're treating this like it's a job interview. And so exactly. So I thought, oh my goodness, what have I done? And so he says, no. He says, that's not what I mean. He said, I already plan on hiring you. He says, I just don't know what you're going to do yet.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
And I was like, what?
But,
he says,
yeah.
I know what you do. I know what you're about. He said, I want you to work for me, but I just don't know what you're going to do for me yet. And so we kind of back and forth a little bit. And he said, what are you interested in? And I'm like, research and development. And he's like, well, yeah, everybody's interested in research and development. He says, do you have any other? I'm like, research and development. So he said, okay, leave it with me, and then called me back in about a week later and said, listen, you're going to be the woodworking technical advisor. You're going to be accessible from all aspects of the company. If there's, if they have woodworking questions, or, maybe, photography can ask, how you hold a specific tool, or, provide information about copy for the, so it's this job that, I just, a lot of people talk about, oh, I love my job. I love my job.
Cool. We need one of those at the magazine.
Technical advisor?
Yes.
Yeah. Is this an interview?
This is not an interview.
Don't treat it like an
This is
interview.
not it. But anyway, so it's cool because every day is different, right? So sometimes I'm working on instructions, sometimes I'm working on video, because I do the videos for the Veritas channel, for the Lee Valley channel, pardon me. And then I do a lot of traveling to, all the different countries where our tools are carried, and get to do cool stuff.
Are you the technical advisor for the April Fool's video?
I have a part in that. This year, so I always do the voiceover because someone said that I can sound animated. I don't know what that
like
means.
your animation, or that you sound. Oh, hey.
Yeah, well, I really don't know. They didn't really specify,
animated.
so I don't know if it's because I'm animated or if I. Yeah.
See, the funny is, after I heard this story, I called Wally and tried the same thing, and he told me that Tim Hortons was hiring.
Well, you know. Well, and like that, I don't mean to burst your bubble, but Tim Hortons has some pretty
High standards.
high standards.
I couldn't even get a job at Hortons. I ended up at Canadian Tire.
Yeah.
It was
yeah. Oh
horrible.
no, Canadian Tire's cool too. That's a neat place.
What are we doing here? I just saw Chris Bextor walking by, and he was telling us that we were gabbing too much.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
He's giving us the evil eye there.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Maybe it's time that we wrap it up.
Is that what we're trying to say?
No.
No, Wilbur Pan is
Well,
coming on.
Wilbur Pan is
on.
coming.
Yeah.
One more guest.
All right.
Wilbur Pan, another guy.
Yes, he's
Let's
a
bring on
person.
Wilbur.
Yeah, you're
All right.
off. You're off
Well,
the
thanks,
show, my
Vic.
friend.
All right. Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for
Yeah.
Lee Valley for coming.
All right. Cool to be
Yeah.
here.
All right, here comes Wilbur. See you, Vic. Hey, Wilbur. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Do you want to introduce Wilbur?
Yeah, I guess. This is Wilbur Pan.
This is my first time meeting Wilbur. So
Wilbur lives in New Jersey.
Yep.
And can I say what you do for a living? Or
Sure.
why don't you tell us what you do for a living?
So my day job is that I'm a pediatric oncologist,
Which means you're a superhero.
which
Pretty much,
is
yeah.
generally a conversation stopper. I've learned that over the
It's
years.
an amazing job.
Yeah.
But also, you're an avid woodworker. You love woodworking.
Yep. Mhm.
And you work a lot exclusively with Japanese tools.
Mainly.
Mainly
but
with
yeah,
Japanese
yeah,
tools. And you
yeah.
have a lot of knowledge about how they're made, why they're made that way, and how they work.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show, Wilbur.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, we need a question. This was a surprise
we didn't have a question.
guest.
There was a surprise guest.
Do we have a question for him to
No.
ask?
But Wilbur does have a bandsaw.
Wilbur owns a
His-
you own a
his
bandsaw?
bandsaw.
I do have a bandsaw.
Yeah.
All right, so this is Wilbur and I were talking about this earlier today because we have talked about Mike and I like Japanese chisels. So and we've talked about Japanese chisels get really sharp, right, Mike?
Yes, I would say sharper than Western steel chisels.
Yep.
Yes.
So that's not.
I think so too.
Why do you think that?
yes. That's what I was going to get to. Wilbur told me explained it very well.
Yeah.
So explain it to us.
Oh, okay, so this is actually something that I talk about when I teach about Japanese tools.
Hint for next year.
Yeah. and it has to do basically if you understand how steel is put together, it helps. So the really short version is ultimately steel is a combination of really hard particles called carbides that's embedded in stuff that holds it together. And in my talk, I have a picture of a blueberry muffin where the blueberries are the carbides and the muffin part is the stuff that holds everything together. And then because of the carbides, that's what allows the steel to remain hard and take an edge, and that's how that works. So one of the things that's important, I think, in terms of how a steel behaves is how big are those carbides? And there are a couple things that'll control that. So number one is, do you have other alloying agents in the steel? And there are reasons for putting them in, but they will change the size of the carbides, and generally they'll make them larger. Not always, but that's usually what happens. The second thing that holds true for Japanese steels is that Japanese chisels and plane blades are made with a forged welding process where the blacksmith basically heats up the steel and pounds the heck out of it to laminate the soft layer and the hard layer together. And what that does is the carbides are physically broken down into smaller and smaller bits, and they're dispersed more evenly through the layer. So think of a cup with colored sand in it, and you add another color, and you shake it up, and it's going to distribute more evenly. So those two things together will cause a very even distribution of very, very small carbides. And here, excuse me, here I don't have data to support this, but if you look at the composition of the carbides in Damascus swords from the Middle East from like the thousands or so, people have analyzed that, and the carbides are significantly smaller than what you find in typical tool steels. And that's why I think the Japanese chisels and plane blades behave the way they do. So in my picture, instead of having a blueberry muffin, you have a lemon poppy seed muffin. and I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, Ben, we know. I mean, come on.
Is it time to speed up again?
But so it's like this. It's like when you sharpen a plane blade, for example, if you were to stop at 1,000 grit, the scratches would be really big, right? So it wouldn't be as sharp. And if you go to 8,000 grit, the scratches get really small, so it's sharper. So when the carbide is smaller, it's sharper.
But you can also go finer with your stones and get a benefit from it.
Right.
Yes.
So,
Right.
so you can go like to 16,000 Shapton instead of 8,000 Norton or something like that.
Right.
And now I'm going to start a fight because, of course, you have to hollow grind your Japanese chisels. Boom! I'm out of here.
Well, thanks for we're going to move on to I guess the closing. But thanks for coming to the show. And
Thanks, Wilbur.
Yeah,
thanks for sharing that tip.
Yeah, it's been a great event so far. I'm really looking forward to
Awesome.
the rest of it.
Excellent. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, folks, that is all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Please spread the word about Shop Talk Live to your woodworking friends and neighbors. Shop Talk Live is dependent on your questions, so make sure to send them in to shoptalk@taunton.com. You can subscribe to the podcast via iTunes, and while you're there, please give us the 5-star rating, and don't forget to leave your comments. Finally, if you're watching on YouTube, please click that thumbs up button. You can keep up with Fine Woodworking on Instagram and on Facebook, and look for all of us on Instagram as well. Thanks for listening, and have fun in the shop. Adios from
Southbridge. When we started, there were tons of people watching,
Kisses.
and there's nobody watching
Kisses.
now.
Kisses.
You're going to get a catalpa, a honey locust, an elm, box elder, sycamore, redwood, elm, bird's eye cherry, curly cherry, blister cherry, a knotty maple, a red oak, a really interesting ash, the American elm, heartwood, sapwood, tulip poplar. That's paint grade, Hank. Whole trees, blue butt poplar, rainbow poplar, curly maple, white oak, Clara walnut, applewood, a couple of burls with some madrone, honey locust, or pink ivory, curly beech, ash, brown oak, redwood, curly wild redwood I had, Ohio buckeye, West Coast maple, plain rift cut oak. Zoom in. Curly birch, soft maple, red maple, curly beech and maple, and the one on the left is curly red oak. You don't see cherry like that all that often. Nice curly maple. You don't see curly maple like this very often. Purple heart, mixed maples, Cuban mahogany, American sycamore. It's like lacewood, sugar maple, cherry, crazy beautiful cherry, curly maple, an endless supply of scrap. And that can be fun too. This is curly oak, and that is highly impractical. Albizia lebic, yew wood, pink ivory, red maple, seaside mayho, pearwood, Cuban mahogany. I'm calling it Cuban. It came from Florida. We'll call it Florida mahogany. Yew wood burl, really unusual ash, crazy, really wild ash. Quarter sun, curly white oak. I like oak for all of its historical sort of strength, and I like curls because who doesn't?